Good morning and welcome to Race Industry Now, the weekly webinar series from EPARTRADE, presented to you by ARP, Performance Plus Global Logistic, Peak, Shop Monkey, and Fifth Third Bank Motorsport. I am Francisque Savignan, the founder and CEO of EPARTRADE, the global platform for the performance and racing industry. This is episode 341. And we're going to be talking ECU with ECUMaster. So with me this morning are Judy Kin, the co-founder of EPARTRADE, and for third time in a row, our superstar three-time co-chief champion, Mr. Jeff Hammond. Judy.
Thank you, Francisque, and thank you everybody for joining us today. ECUMaster was one of the first suppliers that jumped on board on this platform. They took the time to understand the concept of this platform, and they're showcasing very similar to if they were exhibiting at a trade show. They're here all year long for buyers. And we have hundreds and hundreds of suppliers on board now. So please, buyers, take advantage of it. There are companies on here, I promise you've never heard of, because I've never heard of them. So it's going to be a good 45 minutes to an hour here. So Jeff?
Well, thank you, Judy, and good morning, Francis. And yeah, I'm excited about today. I come up from the school of, if it had fuel and fire, that's how you make an engine run. But today, these things have got a brain of their own that do so much more than just, make the engine run. They tell you a lot of things that are going on within the happenings of the car from front to back. And I think that's the one thing that I miss as far as being a crew chief is all the information you're able to get immediately at the end of a run, which you could not get back in the good old days. And I'm really excited about the fact that Zach Denny is going to be part of this program today. He's going to share a lot of what's going on in the industry. There he is. Good morning, Zach.
Good morning. How are you?
Morning.
Doing well.
My understanding is we're going to have a little video before we start the presentation, right? So we're going to ask Reed, our producer, to launch the video, and then it's going to be on you after that to take over, Zach and Jeff.
Introducing the next generation of ECUMaster engine management, the all-new ECUMaster Emu Pro. Designed and manufactured in-house at ECUMaster headquarters, the Emu Pro 8 and Pro 16 feature up to 16 peak hold injector outputs and 12 ignition outputs. With dual drive-by-wire throttle control, high current ignition drivers, dual oxygen sensor controllers, and 8 exhaust gas temperature inputs on board, wiring in additional boxes is a thing of the past. The ECUMaster Emu Pro is packed with cutting-edge technology and features, making it the ultimate tool for car enthusiasts, tuners, and racers alike. Whether you're a professional working in motorsports or a weekend warrior, the ECUMaster Emu Pro has you covered. One of the standout features of the ECUMaster Emu Pro is its ease of use. The intuitive user interface makes tuning and diagnosing your engine a breeze. You can monitor critical engine parameters in real time with the ability to adjust fuel, ignition, and boost tables in a matter of seconds. The ECUMaster Emu Pro also includes an advanced data logging system, allowing you to capture up to 32 gigabytes of data and review it in detail. Whether you're tuning for maximum power or looking to identify an engine issue, the ECUMaster Emu Pro has the data you need. With 2 CAN bus networks and a LIN bus, the Emu Pro makes it easy to integrate with other devices, no matter the brand. With its compact size, the ECUMaster Emu Pro can be installed in a wide range of vehicles without taking up precious space. Finally, the ECUMaster Emu Pro is fully customizable with a wide range of advanced features, functions, and custom tables available. Whether you need gearbox control, anti-lag, boost control, or much more, the Emu Pro has you covered. ECUMaster, making sense of making power.
Impressive. Very impressive, Zach. And how in the world did you get such a little small box like that to do so many different things so efficiently?
That's we got to credit that to the team in Poland. So I distribute ECUMaster products in North America and two other brands as well. We distribute Verkline and ZRP products, but the team in Poland, they're really obsessive about a lot of things. One is the physical packaging of the ECU, and you know, thermally it's kind of a miracle they got everything on that board in such a small computer. But it helps a lot when you realize how little space you end up in a race car once you start piling components in it.
No, you're right about that. And you know, kind of like what we're talking about starting and what your industry is all about. How did you get started in the industry? I mean, what led you to want to, you know, tackle a very difficult, I think, line of product that goes into race cars? I mean, this is the brain. I mean, this is the some gun that tells everything what to do the right way. So that's a pretty huge undertaking.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been an automotive enthusiast. You know, a bunch of riders that I followed as a kid with, you know, Hot Rod Magazine and Road and Track, and was always in love with it. Worked in the industry in various roles as a mechanic, a fabricator. Went back to school in my late 20s for engineering, and I participated in the Formula SAE program. And I was in charge of the electronics of the race car. And I, you know, used some products and didn't find a good fit for what we needed in terms of something that was more budget friendly, but still pretty configurable. Stumbled across the products that the guys at ECUMaster were making, and mentioned it to a family member, and he gave me a little bit of seed money to start, and wrote him a really nice email and said, hey, I'd like to sell your products in North America and I'd like to be your exclusive representative. And that was it. And that was almost 10 years ago now. Yeah.
Well, outstanding. We keep touching on it, but let me just cut straight to the chase. What differentiates your product from everything else out there, you know, in the industry right now? Because again, we touched on it. They've got a lot of information and looks very compartmentalized and in my terminology, small, for especially for a race car. I mean, which is great because we don't need a lot of weight in there, but we need a lot of information. So what's one of the key things, or several of the key things, that differentiate your product from everybody else?
Yeah, that's so initially I fell in love with ECUMaster products when I first read their spec sheet. Is that, you know, when we started, it was really unusual to be able to buy an ECU that had a built-in controller for an oxygen sensor. You know, even today, there's still some brands out there where it's you know, you got to jump through a lot of hoops to get an ECU to control an O2 sensor when it's such a critical piece of information. Even from the beginning, the guys at ECUMaster, they put in a 4-bar map sensor, so it reads your manifold pressure, so it reads, you know, vacuum and boost. That was a big deal. They had EGT inputs built into the box. So, you know, where for another solution, you might have 4 or 5 different boxes in the car. They were packaging everything in one enclosure, and it's nice because you don't have to go buy different things. You get all the basics in one box, and that's always been kind of a core strategy, was putting as much into one box as possible. And now we've expanded, and ECUMaster has our power management units, and we've got dash displays and all these other things. So yeah, there are certain times where it makes sense to have different modules in different locations, but you know, keeping that to a minimum and maximizing what you've got in each box is a big deal. So that drew me to the brand. And then the price point was the first thing that sold me too, is that you can spend twice as much with the same hardware. And you just, you know, the value for dollar with ECUMaster products is very, very good. And finally with the Emu Pro, we've got a really high-end ECU at a price point that's not out of reach for most people. So it's always that balance of what you get for your money and how many features you need, and is it easy to use. And the team at ECUMaster have done a really good job kind of balancing on the needle with that.
You've kind of touched on, but let's try to break it down maybe a little bit further. When people come to you, either asking you for, I'm starting a new race team and I need this product, that's probably an easy deal because they're looking for you. But what about people who already got something and yet they don't have what they really need? I mean, how do you talk to them and not, you know, kind of like put them down, but at the same time show how your product will outdo their product? I mean, it doesn't sound like it's a hard sell, but you know, I'm sure you have to, you know, convince some people who want to be hard line.
Yeah, we've got a lot of customers who they've got loyalty to a particular brand of electronics, or they're in a class that requires them to use the stock engine controller. That happens a lot where they're trying to keep classes more affordable for people. And so, again, one of our core principles has always been to make sure that all the products play nice with other products. That with I don't know if you're familiar with CAN bus, but it's basically a 2-wire network, and so you can send all the data from one device to another. And we've done a really good job, I think, of making it easy to talk with other brands of products or stock controllers where, hey, I might not be able to sell you an ECU because you're class restricted or for whatever reason, but I can sell you a dash display that plugs into OBD2 and grabs data, or I can sell you a power management unit to manage all of your functions. You got an electric water pump, and it's a problem if that thing turns off and you don't know it. Whereas if you got a traditional fuse and relay setup with that, you're not going to know until the engine overheats, but we can tell you within, I think it's 10 or 20 milliseconds that it's not operating correctly, put in a fail-safe strategy, warn you on the dash display. There's a lot of benefits for the driver and the team with kind of having smart devices everywhere that play nicely with whatever electronics you already have.
Hey, you talk about all this, and I saw that the digital dash you had mounted on the steering column. How much can you put on that digital dash, or is it kind of like unlimited as far as the amount of information that you can build into a dash for that, for your application?
I mean, it's a few hundred channels of data you can display on it, and it becomes a balancing act of, I've got different dash layouts. If I'm sitting in the pits waiting to go out and make a lap, I'm going to have a different screen up than when I'm on track. When I'm on track as a driver, you want one big red flashing light if something goes wrong, and you want your rev limiter bar across the top of the LEDs to flash at you, but you don't want much more information than that. Maybe a couple of temperatures here and there, but you can get pretty granular and have other pages. You can do automatic page changes or overlays where, if something gets out of range, whether it's pressure or temperature, you can pull that up. We've even got a graphic representation if you use our infrared tire temp sensors. I noticed in one of my drift cars that, we had a cool down spot after each lap where you drive through a little water box. And it wasn't until I really looked at that screen and switched over to it before I hit the water box, I recognized that I wasn't really cooling the tires down that much. So I went back and made a second pass through the water box, got the temps down, and got, I don't know, at least 20, 30% more life out of those tires just by recognizing they weren't really coming down to temp through the water box. So you can display as little or as much as you want. You can make it automatic. You can have a manual button to change pages. It's just a really useful tool. So you can load it up on a lot of data for sure.
Do you have any current associations, or like I'm going to use it just like a NASCAR or F Formula One types of series that you guys are really excelling in?
We started kind of from my core. I worked at shops that dealt in a lot of imports, and then with ECUMaster being a European brand, our first ECUs were really aimed at the 4 and 6 cylinder market, and I pushed for many years to get more output channels available for the domestic market, and big motors that need 2 injectors per cylinder. And so we finally got that with the Emu Pro. So yeah, historically our core market has been a lot of the Japanese and European stuff. We have had a fair amount of LS guys and domestic stuff, but it was just this year that we got the Emu Pro lineup that'll do 16 peak hold injectors, and really for kind of the big boy setups that are making thousands of horsepower.
So within the capabilities of your unit, can you program it to do pit road speeds and different things like that?
Absolutely. Yeah, we've got pit limiters in, I think, all of our ECUs. I know for sure that the Emu Black and all the Pro lineup, we've got sequential gearbox control, we've got drive-by-wire throttle, we've got a whole lot of motorsport features built in. We're working on control for automatic transmissions right now for your electronically shifted like a planetary type transmission like 4L60, 4L80, the Toyota gearboxes, and we'll expand that lineup as we go further. If you've got a TH400 or a Power Glide, there's not a lot of electronic control unless you're doing a trans brake, and we're working on that as well. So yeah, we're with the Emu Pro. We started with the most needed features at the start of the race season. We're adding more as we expand in other markets, but certainly we've done a lot in road racing, rally, drifting, time attack, hill climb, on-road, off-road. We're going to get more into the drag racing market now that we have more channels, but that's a big market globally for drag racing. I mean, the numbers are just getting silly these days.
Really? I thought everything that they did was so straightforward and so fast that it would be, I'm not saying impossible, but there would be just certain specifics that, you know, you wouldn't have time to maybe, I guess you might say, amass a big data log, but I guess I'm being told wrong.
Yeah, I mean, you can measure stuff at, 500 times a second or more. So there's a lot of data to be had there once you're looking very closely at it.
Yeah. Like I say, that's pretty wild stuff. I mean, even down to the fact that, you know, when you say the sequential transmission, and would you say sequential override? I mean, how does that work? I mean, I'm a little bit curious about that.
Yeah, with a lot of racing gearboxes for road racing cars, a lot of them are air shifted, so you have solenoids that trigger the up and down shifts, and in that window, you have to unload and reload the gear set very carefully so you don't damage the dogs, which are basically big teeth that engage each gear set. And so that strategy you can get very, very detailed with how you ramp ignition timing in and out, how you do cuts, because like these long endurance races, if you're really too hard on those dogs, you're not going to make it through an event. And so there's a lot to be done there, and it has to be done very quickly and carefully to make sure you're not damaging the gearbox with every gear change. So you need a lot of very fine control there. I mean, almost any ECU can do a pretty heavy-handed upshift or downshift, but to get it very right under a lot of different conditions and different loads is very challenging. It takes a lot of time to set up.
And now, is that based off of wheel spin? So how that works on that as far as keeping a guy or I look at like you put in a rev limiter of some kind to keep somebody from, making a mistake in that shift, correct?
So the shift would be done automatically. I mean, you can have some lockouts, right? If somebody's trying to downshift and they're already at red line, you'd lock them out with the strategy so they're not going to mechanically overspin the motor. But in terms of wheel spin, the traction control strategy is a whole different animal, and another one that you can get really, really fine-tuned on that with a lot of different conditions and make the car very drivable for somebody who, if you've got a really fantastic driver, they can drive almost anything, but there's not a lot of human beings that can adjust themselves 500 or 1,000 times a second, right? We're with the controller, we're trying to do things that the driver just can't do.
I love something that's smarter than a driver. No, I mean, like I say, all of this to me, it's mind blowing when you think about, most of the time when you think about an ECU, you just look at the basics, but you guys keep adding channels and looking in so many different areas. What is going to be the next big challenge for you guys? I mean, what are people asking for that's not available? What's going to be the next thing on the horizon of a breakthrough in your industry?
Yeah, we're already seeing it in some of the top levels. I mean, we play in from consumers to prosumers to, a lot of pro level racing teams, but you've got some guys at the Formula One level. They're integrating hybrid drivetrains and doing very, very complex analysis modeling. And we've always seen technology trickle down from the top levels and from, OEM manufacturers. So I think that's the future. I mean, the first big step we're taking now on the ECUmaster side is preparing for direct injection, because virtually every production vehicle right now has direct injection, which has a lot of benefits for efficiency and for making power. And so that's going to be a learning curve for a lot of the guys tuning, because there's just more knobs to turn. And, you have to be a little more careful with direct injection than you do with port injection. There's less wiggle room for making a mistake, but that's the biggest one that I see in the short term. And then as we start integrating hybrid systems and, even the switch to EVs, we're going to see a lot of electric and hybrid racing vehicles coming down the pipeline, which is a whole different animal. But it's exciting when you think you could have an extra 300 horsepower electrically on your front wheels, and then maybe the rear wheels driven by a combustion engine. I mean, it opens a lot of doors for control, but then the modeling gets very complex. So nothing's getting less simple with time. I'll tell you that much for sure.
So I think you've already told me this just now, but I'm gonna go back and ask the same question again. So what data would help most teams improve their performance? And what's the one thing that you run into with your customers that maybe they don't realize they don't have, or that what they do have is not working as efficiently as what you could give them?
Yeah, I think a lot of that depends on what type of motorsport they're competing in, right? With drag racing, the vehicle is a huge part of equation, right? The reaction time of the driver is very important, but in terms of mechanically how much grip the chassis is producing, that's a big metric. Whereas in a road race car, the driver is such a huge portion of it. So, but I think most teams out there at the amateur and entry level, pro level, they're not using data as much as they should. They're not focusing on analysis. They're looking at a few parameters here and there, making sure temperatures are in check. But I think the cheapest and biggest gains to be had with most racing teams are, one, making time for actual testing. We're all always late to the racetrack, making our first shot off the trailer in an untested car, right? That is pretty common throughout the industry. And then two, using that data from testing to identify where they can make improvements. So I think that the teams that are really going to set themselves apart over the next couple of decades are the ones who are going to be so heavy on data analysis and data acquisition. I mean, you look at any pro level team, and again, everything trickles down, right? You see a wall of engineers at a Formula One race, all looking at the data in real time, giving feedback, changing settings, and you can mimic that pretty effectively if you've got the budget and some time. But that's where they're finding a lot of improvements, because that's where the gains are to be found these days.
Well, you were talking about the drag race scenario, and when you automatically in my head is bouncing here that could we be looking in the future of controlling wheel spin, which is one of the the critical deals, is everybody understands how the clutches have to hook up and when they come into play. And could this be an opportunity for an ECU to anticipate this ahead of what's getting ready to happen? You know what I'm saying? And is there telltales that could help stop that or make it better?
Absolutely. Yeah. And you can use a lot of factors. There's already a lot of teams now, and they're, if you can create a model based on, reacting to data, which is looking at wheel speed. If you've got an accelerometer in the car, which measures the acceleration force, you can measure, a lot of people are using ride height sensors, whether that's laser or a shock potentiometer. So you can look at what the physical chassis of the car is doing and what the tires are doing and manage that. Or you can say, hey, with the amount of grip that we've calculated we have here, a perfect run means our wheel speed does this over a pass as we're commanding this much power output from the engine. And if it deviates from that, we know we've got wheel spin and we're going to pull some torque out of it and get the car back in shape. So you've got a lot of data available to it, whether it's from wheel speeds or accelerometers or shock travel sensors or laser ride height sensor. But again, right now, the people that are doing the best in drag racing are making use of that data, and they have historically a lot of data from different tracks, different conditions. They can look at grip levels and see what's happening with the car, but that's what's going to set people apart, because at this point, making power is not the problem. We've got drag cars making 4,000 or 5,000 horsepower at we're not talking top fuel. These are cars that you can just go out and buy pre-built from a lot of builders now. And so when you have access to that, the person behind the keyboard becomes a much bigger part of the equation.
Well, we've got a question here from John Furnett, and he wants to know, can you tell me more about your new, and I see it over your shoulder right there, your PMU 16 and how it compares to your other ECUs?
Yeah, I think he's actually talking about the Emu Pro, because the PMU 16 is a power management unit. So the PMU replaces fuses and relays in a race car. And it's a really, really great device. It's been out for a few years now, has a really good, strong place in the market. The Emu Pro is our big new product for this year. So the Pro 8 and Pro 16, big change there is the Pro 16 gets one additional connector. So it gets more inputs and outputs compared to the Pro 8. But in terms of strategy, they're both identical. What really sets them apart is not only just the number of inputs and outputs, which are the number of sensors you connect and the things you can control, like throttles, injectors, ignition coils. The strategies were redone from scratch. We started basically clean sheet with the Emu Pro lineup. And again, it's always a balance between complexity and user friendliness. So we've added a lot of features, like if you wire up a drive-by-wire throttle, it has a full test procedure. It cycles it through the full range of motion, finds the break point if there's a breakover spring in the throttle as a fail-safe, and then does the full programming for the PID loops. And PID loops are just control loops. That's done automatically. If you have a variable cam timing engine, historically it was hard to dial in the control loops for that, and that's done automatically now. So it's been a big effort in taking something very complex and making it more user friendly and reducing the number of hours that a tuner has to spend dialing in things that a computer can dial in for itself, right? The tuner needs to be tuning tables and say, hey, we need to find where the camshaft position makes the most power. I mean, compared to mechanically degreeing a cam, being able to do it with the keyboard is so much faster on a dyno that has good readings. But you don't need to be dialing in the control loop. You need to be, testing different targets for that cam position. So that's a big deal with the Emu Pro is making sure that the tuner's hours are spent actually tuning and not setting up. But it is a very complex ECU. You can do a lot of different strategies. So we've added lots of features that weren't available in the Emu Black. And the Emu Black is a great ECU, but the Emu Pro is much more motorsport level, for professional teams, a lot more data available in terms of logging. They all benefit from our DataMaster suite, which is our data analysis software. So you can use a log from the Emu Black or the Emu Pro, but the Emu Pro is really a top tier motorsport level ECU that competes with just about anything on the market right now. A few other features we've done, we're seeing a lot of people, again, with OEM vehicles, whether that's a side-by-side or a motorcycle, anything off-road, even modern vehicles, the CAN bus is very proprietary. Everybody's got their own set of data. And so we've got a lot of dealers and tuners that will make a package for a particular side-by-side. And we've made it possible now with, actually it's coming in 1 or 2 firmware updates for them to be able to lock down and password protect all the CAN bus data that they've created. It takes a lot of hours to reverse engineer that and make it compatible with a vehicle. And so now they'll be able to make a plug and play package for a particular vehicle, password protect it, and have that as a sellable, marketable product that they can sell as a package to a racer, which is it's neat, creates a new business opportunity for tuners rather than just selling their labor once when they tune a car on the dyno. They can give a ready to go package to a customer and still let them tune the ignition and fuel tables and whatever else, but not lose the hours they put into research and development. So yeah, I would say that everything gets expanded a little bit more. Lots more inputs and outputs. I mean, it's a big step forward in every way, but a lot of things were a clean sheet for the ECU.
Do y'all have a relationship with any of the manufacturers currently? I see you got a TRD engine over one shoulder there, and so makes me think Toyota, GM, Ford. I mean, what all kind of interactions are you doing with with the manufacturers?
Not much. Those guys play the cards pretty close to their chest. I think in our whole industry, the only partnerships I've seen with any aftermarket ECU company with an OEM is maybe within their factory-backed racing programs, which the guys in Poland, they do have some relationships with a couple of companies over there, I think mostly for rallying. But yeah, it's never going to be, almost never going to be directly with the OEM. It's going to be with one of the racing divisions. So there's a little bit of that, but not a ton. But in terms of the TRD valve cover, I'm just I've always had Toyotas and kind of a nerd, and I saw that on eBay and thought it was a cool trinket. Eventually I'd like to own one of the TRD NASCAR motors and stuff it in something fun, but it's just nice wall decoration at this point.
No, it's totally understandable right there. They make a great product. I mean, so many great things are coming from the manufacturers, and I'm just curious to see, if they had reached out to you. And I can understand it's like everything else, they don't want to let anybody inside basically the hen house, you might say. But we got a couple more questions here, and Sean Switzer would like to know, will we see the ECUmaster implemented with the GS7 DCT control with the Emu Pro 16/8? I would love to have the ability to keep everything under one roof for my electronics if possible.
Yeah, I think he's referring to the 7-speed DCT that we see. I think BMW uses it quite a bit. Yes, the guys in Poland they've started working on that. I don't know when it would be implemented or finished, but that is a goal on the horizon. We already have DSG control for like the DQ250 and DQ500, which are the front wheel drive oriented dual clutch boxes. So we've got a lot of familiarity with DCT control already. We're going to expand that to more gearboxes in the future for sure.
And Pedro would like to know, does your EMU Pro have a built-in data log, or does it need a USB pin?
Yeah, it actually logs to a USB flash drive. We like that because you don't have to plug a laptop into the car to get the data log out of the car, right? You just simply unplug the USB stick. You can transfer it to your laptop very quickly. Also, for me, a situation that happens a lot is if you're, making a driver change, you came in from a lap, it can be really clumsy and you have to leave the car powered on to get data logs off the car. So if you're doing a driver change in an endurance race, the driver gets out, they take their own flash drive, you've got all their data, and it's basically an instant swap. So the choice is made for those reasons. And plus it's up to 32 gigs. So you can have an absolute ton of data on there. I mean, that's, I don't know how many hours of data running at full frequency. But yeah, it's an external USB stick that you plug in.
Again, we've talked so much about how clean and how small the unit appears to be. How much does something like, your ECUmaster Pro, how much does it weigh when you've got the Mac Daddy, everything in the car like you'd like to have that anybody would ever want? What kind of weight are we talking about there?
I mean, really, the weight's going to depend on your choice of wire and wire sheathing, right? The wiring is going to weigh a lot more than the devices themselves. So, and that depends on where you locate it. But yeah, I mean, a complete electronics package for a car, even something fairly complex, I mean, you're probably talking using motorsport materials, I would think probably in the 20 to 30 pound range, and that probably includes some battery cables. So it's not nothing, but it's with motorsport stuff, you can get away with a little bit lighter weight than you would in like an OEM application.
Does it take any boost in your alternator or anything like that to keep the system, running effectively and not affect anything else inside the car?
Yeah, and the factory alternator is going to be fine unless if you're adding a bunch of fans on a race car, you need to think about your system as a whole. I mean, if you've got a car that runs really hot, depending on the type of car, I know, drag racing cooling is not a gigantic concern unless we're talking drag and drive. But yeah, it depends on your system. But the ECU itself doesn't draw much current at all. I mean, the only things it's going to actually power are going to be like a drive-by-wire throttle. Everything else is going to be just passing through the ECU as it closes the circuit to ground. So not a lot of current usage there, but certainly, yeah, alternators are something that a lot of people don't consider enough when that's creating all the juice for the whole vehicle.
Well, I mean, I know that there have been in the past, some systems that if you don't have it with enough power constantly, you're going to have misfires. You're going to have, what I'm saying, you're going to start having electrical issues because something's trying to steal from something else, or it's not enough energy or power or good grounds, all those kind of things. At least in my past experiences, will rear its ugly head, especially when you start adding to the system. We're trying to improve your system.
Right. And the minimum voltages for our devices are really low, and they're actually built to an automotive specification. So, everything else is going to be really unhappy before the ECU is. So it'll be, one of the last things working if your system gets down to a voltage that low. So that's not a huge concern, but definitely concern yourself with having a healthy electrical system, but the ECU is not going to give out before anything else does.
All right, while we're kind of like talking about the systems, I'm going to skip down here to Jim Donnie, and he says, do you offer training on the software, or is it pretty much self-explanatory? I think that's a pretty good question, because I know a lot of times when I'm looking at something that's got a bunch of wires, and is it pretty easy to wire it all up, with the instructions or with a lesson or two?
Yeah, I think there's always value in training, just because even if you know exactly what you want to accomplish, every manufacturer uses slightly different terminology, or they locate a table somewhere differently than another company would. So we do offer training. Back a few weeks ago, we just finished our first Emu Pro training course here at our facility in Garland, Texas. The guys in Poland, I'm not sure if we did training there for global distributors. I'm not sure if they're going to do another course soon. And then my goal over the next couple of months is to do a full video series where we offer online training as a package. We'll look into how we want to format that, but then we'll do faster videos, shorter format for YouTube. So if you just need to get up to speed on one particular thing, you don't have to watch, a 10-hour long course. But yeah, training is a huge component.
So if I had interest in, I could get on a plane or drive to Texas and come to your facility and attend a class, or?
Correct. Yep. And the goal is to offer it in person and then also have an online version that people can access without having to travel and take time away from their business. So I try to make everything as accessible as possible.
And I'm sure the question now in everybody's mind, just how long can you expect to come out there and stay and, be able to, again, believing that you're smart enough to be out there to be trained in this stuff. How long should that course take before you'd be done?
Yeah, we usually it's a 2-day course is what we've historically done, where
Okay.
the first day is more classroom and the second day is almost all hands-on just to get people familiar with it. So yeah, 2-day course works well. We'd like to go in depth further on some other products later, but for now we typically do a 2-day course.
All right, Sean would like to have another stab at this, saying not to keep dragging it on about releases and additional features, but do you have more info on the PMU 24 schedule?
Yep, that one's really close to the end of development. I don't have an exact date on that, but that's, the guys in Poland are working on it as fast as they can, but it's pretty close to the finish line. So I wouldn't expect that to take much longer, but I don't have an exact date because once all the development's done, they've got to schedule a production run. So it's, we're not talking in the next couple of weeks, but I don't have an exact date, but it is close.
Okay. I'm not familiar with what he's talking about, and I don't know how many people on the call are. So is this something that's in the future where you guys have got coming down the pike that's going to be available?
Yep. Yeah. So our power management units, again, like I said, they replace all the fuses and relays in your race car and give you a lot of control. You can monitor them for over and under current. You can retry a channel. If you've got something that's failing, you can trigger a backup system if you have a redundant system for something. They're really clever devices. And the PMU 16 has 16 outputs. The PMU 24 will have 24 outputs. So for a race car, if you're using, turn signals and wipers and lights and all that, you can run out of outputs fairly quickly. So the PMU 24 will be just kind of an evolution of the PMU 16 with 8 more 7-amp outputs to give you a few more channels for a car that's a little bit more complex. So yeah, we were hoping to have it ready by now, but the development took just a little bit longer than expected, but it should be out pretty shortly.
We got everybody out there thinking right now. I love this interaction we're getting from our viewers. Boone Cruz would like to know, I'm currently in use with an EMU Black and an S13 grassroots drift car. And I also have a data logger and love analyzing my logs. For simple grassroots cars, are there advantages to the new Pro that would have someone like me finding it useful to upgrade? I guess is what he's asking.
Yeah, it really just depends on how complex your car is and what your goals are. The EMU Pro is a really fantastic product, but if the EMU Black is installed in your car and it's working and meets your needs, then I wouldn't jump to replace it. As much as I love selling people ECUs, but the EMU Pro gives you a lot more latitude for creating custom tables, and it's a much more open world. You can do a lot more with it. So I would look at your racing program and see, but certainly it is an upgrade. But for a simple grassroots drift car, that's maybe not the most demanding application in the world. So if it's meeting your needs, then I wouldn't jump to spend the money unless, if you really love learning, expanding and learning new things and trying new concepts and strategies, then certainly that's a valuable thing.
But if the guy has future aspirations of moving up, then the new one would really it's something you can take with you and keep moving into to a different level.
Absolutely. Class. Yeah. And really the benefits of the EMU Pro are not only the more, control strategies you can implement, but having a lot more channels of data available. There's physically more places to put sensors into the ECU. So if you want to start logging more channels and having more data, then that's going to be a big step up for certain.
Going back to your class, if you run into trouble and something's not quite coming out the way it is, do you have the capabilities, an online emergency number, like I'm at a track and I got a problem? Do you guys have anything that is readily available, especially when a lot of these races are racing on weekends? Do you guys provide anything like that?
I'm really careful to make sure that my employees get to enjoy their weekends off and spend time with family and relax. So we don't have anything like that 7 days a week now, but we do have a user group on Facebook with almost 30,000 members. And so you can guarantee somebody's always looking there, and it's a pretty responsive group. So, but I also recommend to everyone, if you're going to have a racing program and you're not tuning the car yourself, relationship with a tuner is something that almost every racing team in the world needs now. And having somebody to help you look at the data, help you sort through issues that, we can't be everything to everyone at every hour of the day. It's just not possible. But having access to somebody who's an expert in their field, it's important to have that relationship and make sure that if you're going to really try to knock people's heads in at the top level of racing, that you've got somebody in your camp that knows exactly what they're doing.
I think that's great information, because you're exactly right. I know myself, I know what my limits are. So, I would definitely want to surround myself with great engineers and technical people that can handle stuff like that, or at least have somebody on a hotline where I could go to if I was to run into a trouble situation. But I'm impressed that you got 30,000 people that have, and I guess the best way to put it, that are customers of yours and know about your product.
Right. And also too, with the time split between the guys in Poland and the guys, in our team here in the US, that's a big chunk of the day where you can get somebody on the phone 5 days a week, right? So there's a lot of overlap there in terms of time zones, and then also the various distributors throughout the world. And then we also push our customers to develop a good relationship with their dealer, right? And we love our dealer network, and they're all experts in the field too. So there are a lot of avenues for support for sure.
It sounds like your company is a little bit like EPARTRADE. You guys are open 365 days a year, 7 days a week type deal. I mean, it's crazy that, how companies like yourself and EPARTRADE, and the way the world has gotten smaller, especially when it comes to racing, because all the people around the world are now sharing information and know about one another better than they ever had.
Right.
All right, Boone has called back or sent me a note back saying you said you revamped all of your control strategies. Are there any particular that you think are unique or special compared to other ECU manufacturers?
Yeah, I think our what I was talking about with we call them wizards for like drive-by-wire setup and variable cam timing setup. I think that we've really set ourselves apart there, where with our ECU previously, in the beginning, you had to manually set up PID loops, which is just a name for a control strategy, and it's really tedious. It's a lot of work by hand, a lot of looking at logged data. And then Jacob, who founded ECUMaster, he kind of figured out he was doing the same thing every time when he did it by hand. So if you can predict what he's doing and the pattern he's doing it in, then you can write code to do that. But yeah, that's the biggest thing is the wizards self-tuning those things. We're going to add some wizards for some other control strategies. That's at least the goal in the future, that we'll do some self-tuning where previously a tuner had to go in manually and spend a lot of time dialing something in. So I think that's the biggest differentiation with the strategies in the Pro that sets us apart right now, is that you run a wizard and you're done. It's really, there's not a lot of, fussing around. The tuner should be spending time tuning, not dialing in a PID loop. That's the goal, is that the tuner is actually on the keyboard making pulls, seeing what the combo wants, and not wasting time with a bunch of just manual setup.
Well, you used a couple of terms there that I feel like we need to ask this question now. I think it's appropriate. The wizard, the future. I'm gonna put you on the spot, and I know that this is not fair, but hey, life ain't fair. What do you see the industry 20 years from now?
Yeah, I've asked myself this a lot, just because, there's a lot of push against internal combustion. Right? There's a lot of political initiatives and a lot of, kind of fear and gloom and doom, but people still sell carburetors every day. There's hundreds of them being sold every day. That, cars are so durable now that we're not going to cycle out of what we're building now for another 15, 20 years. I mean, the average age of the vehicle on the street right now, it gets longer every year as cars are more durable, they're manufactured better. So, all these timelines for pushing everyone toward full EVs for an electrical grid that just doesn't exist. I think we're still going to see internal combustion as a gigantic portion of the racing industry in 20 years. But we are absolutely going to see more technology being added in every year, whether that's an aftermarket company that figures out how to make a really cool hybrid drivetrain that you get to integrate in your race car. And we're going to see EVs more and more every year. I love the idea of having something classic that doesn't require a carburetor tune-up, couple times a year that doesn't leak oil everywhere, that has a silent, imagine a little 356 Speedster replica that has a 150 horse EV motor, and you just cruise around the neighborhood, go for a little ice cream run, doesn't require any maintenance whatsoever. I think there are really big corners of our industry that would benefit from electrification. But in 20 years, we're still going to see internal combustion as a huge portion of the racing industry. It's just not going to go away that quickly.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think, we're not going to be looking for less information, no matter what type of vehicle we're talking about. We're going to be wanting more. And ECUs, no matter whether it's on combustion engines or electric or whatever the next thing is going to be, it's going to be a necessary part of the evil of the I want to call it the automobile world and the racing world.
Sure.
I really enjoyed the time, and I definitely took a few notes. It makes me feel like that I learned some things here today. I really appreciate it.
Glad to hear it. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you, Zach. Great presentation and brilliant company. And so, this webinar has been recorded. It will be posted later on the EPARTRADE platform, as well as distributed through our different channels, newsletters, social media, etc. We pushed ECUMaster's product back on the homepage of the EPARTRADE platform. As Jeff mentioned, we never sleep. We open 24/7, 365. So please take advantage of it. Again, Zach, thank you very much for being with us today. We will be back live next Wednesday. The presenter will be Peterson Fluid System, and we're going to be talking dry sump oil pump cavitation causes and cures. So thank you again for being with us today, and then please go on EPARTRADE and look at ECUMaster's product. Thank you very much, and let's go racing. Bye-bye.
EPARTRADE is a digital platform that we've created basically to make life easier in the business community of auto racing.
EPARTRADE, there is no e-commerce. It's literally a connection just like at a trade show. So now, any time of the year, a buyer could reach out to a supplier.
When you see a product that you're interested in, all you need to do is click on request more information, and then from there, it is forwarded directly to the buyer or to the supplier.
EPARTRADE really eliminates having to travel, closing down your shop. Now you have a place to showcase globally your racing product and technology.
Land speed record holder George Poteet's Speed Demon rocketed 481 miles per hour at the Bonneville Salt Flats. You don't go that fast without ARP fasteners.
There is no way that we could go the speed that we've gone, the number of times we've gone, with a lesser quality bolt than ARP supplies to us. And we absolutely wouldn't be where we were today if it weren't for ARP.
When failure is not an option, it's ARP-bolts.com.
We're Performance Plus Global Logistics. Our team of dedicated performance industry and logistics experts get valuable cars and components to the track on time in top condition. We provide expedited logistics solutions for the performance industry using direct routes instead of deferred options, and communicate all necessary information to the appropriate resources to meet regulations and ensure a smooth transit and secure delivery, both domestically and internationally. And we exceed customer expectations by providing best-in-class service with an efficient and cost-effective system in place. Contact us today to book your next shipment.
You work as hard as your truck, and you have no time for downtime. That's why more truck owners trust Blue Def, America's #1 diesel exhaust fluid brand. Each batch is guaranteed pure, so you can avoid costly repairs caused by inferior DEF. Demand America's best for your truck. Blue Def and Blue Def Platinum. Put trust in your truck.
I'm Michael Cruz, owner and operator of Got Mechanic LLC. Whether we're out in the field or whether we're in the bay, me and my guys are able to actually go into parts procurement and be able to pull up these prices for our parts and use the parts matrix to actually get a profit off of these parts on the fly. Parts procurement makes it even better just with being able to get in contact with my local retailers.